This case is on the court's docket on a request for the court to reconsider placement. The department is present through Ms. West. CASA is the guardian ad litem. CASA is present through Ms. Fanny Anderson. Spring Thummel is standing in for Katie Casper, this child's attorney ad litem. Sam Martinez is present for the father, Francisco Mercado. The mother, Nayeli Quinones, has not been served.
The court approved substituted service for her, but I have not received the return yet back on that one.
Okay. She has not been served, but we're working on that. All right. Mr. Martinez, you said your client's phone is not receiving calls at this time.
Exactly right.
All right. We're set on was it the department's motion, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
The department calls Shauna Smith. Ms. Smith, where is Jaslyn currently placed?
She is currently placed with her boyfriend's family, in McGregor, Moody McGregor.
And how long has she been placed there?
She's been placed there since she was removed.
Ms. Smith, does the department have concerns about Jaslyn, her current placement?
Yes, we do.
And generally speaking, what concerns does the department have as it relates to Jaslyn's placement?
Jaslyn is currently not getting therapy services, and as we all know, she came into care due to being a sexual assault victim. In addition to that, the department has concerns about her educational needs being met. I did just learn yesterday evening that I'm not sure yet if she actually went to school yesterday either, given that she was at some medical appointments, family planning appointments. And so the department is concerned about her needs being met there. The current caregiver has a young adult daughter who just had a child, and she reported that she wasn't able to meet all of Jaslyn's needs, and that we should have been aware of that as well.
And so you indicated the caregiver has indicated she's unable to meet Jaslyn's needs due to her daughter having a baby in the home?
Yes, that she specifically.
Okay. And so at this time, Ms. Smith, is Jaslyn involved in any sort of therapy?
She's not involved in therapy, no.
And does the department believe she needs to be involved in some therapy?
Yes, very much so.
And am I correct, ma'am, that therapy was also recommended from her CANS assessment?
Yes.
Ms. Smith, you mentioned the home and individuals residing in the home. How many people, to your knowledge, are living in this home?
I think 7, but I don't know if that includes baby now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's quite a few individuals residing in this home, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Is there a concern about adequate living space or Jaslyn having the privacy that she needs as a teenager?
Yes, there is.
Okay. And have you been to the home?
I have not been to the home. The caseworker, Amy Diggs, has been to the home.
Ms. Smith, am I also correct there's concern about some criminal history of some individuals residing in the home?
Yes, this placement, they are not able to be an approved home. It's not an approved home study. There's criminal involvement with her boyfriend, juvenile, and so that is a concern as well.
And ma'am, tell me who you want to go to.
I'm sorry?
Who are you requesting this child be placed with, and where? And is that closer to the father?
The department is currently requesting that Jaslyn be moved to the maternal aunt in Midland, Odessa area. But the department also has an ICPC home study for the maternal uncle in Colorado pending, and we should have it back sometime next month as well. So there is maternal family that is appropriate and willing and committed to care for Jaslyn and meet her needs.
And Ms. Smith, just want to make clear, the maternal aunt is closer to the father than her current placement, correct?
The maternal aunt is in Odessa and father is in Midland, and so it's about 30 minutes.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Mr. Martinez.
What is the name of this maternal aunt?
Her name is Maria.
Maria what?
Maria Rios.
Rios?
Yes.
And I mean, obviously dad has not had any visitation at this particular point in time because I wanted to start out with letters. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. If the child gets moved to Maria Rios's case, are we going to start visitation?
I think there's the potential to start that. Jocelyn is still very hesitant with that, but I think that there definitely is that possibility.
Well, I mean, obviously there was family members that were able to come down and have a visit on the maternal side with the child that she was hesitant to. Is there not a possibility that we could just set up a visit with dad supervised by the department in the Odessa or Midland area?
I think that we can, but while she was hesitant with her maternal family, she had a close relationship with her maternal family and she wanted that visit. That wasn't just set up because the department wanted to set that visit up. That was at her desires as well.
Well, again, we're still asking, can we have a visit? I mean, I think that's all dad is asking for at this particular point in time.
I would feel more comfortable with a therapeutic recommendation for that. And I know that I've spoken with dad about that as well. And I know he's told me he wants to honor his daughter's requests as well.
I'll pass to you.
Ms. Bemmel?
Your Honor, I don't have any questions of this witness.
Ms. Smith, do you believe that the maternal relatives in the Odessa area might be willing or able to sort of maybe at some point meet dad in public, get to know dad, might be a help to that relationship between the child and the father?
I think there is that potential. I am more than happy to continue to explore that with a maternal family. I think that, yes.
And at least if the child is in that vicinity, then visits would be a lot easier to happen.
I think visits would be a lot easier to happen if she were out there closer to him, yes.
All right. Costa's input.
Regarding the visitation with dad?
No, just regarding the change in placement.
Oh, yeah. I'm in agreement with the change in placement.
Okay. Do you have any information about Maria Rios's willingness to maybe meet dad, maybe help facilitate visits?
No, I've never had that discussion with her, so I'm not. Okay. I mean, it seems that way when I met her, but I haven't had that discussion with her.
All right. I'm not changing any orders at this time regarding visitation. I am ordering the department's request for change in placement be approved. One other thing, I don't know how much this relationship she has. At one point, the boyfriend was probably the most stable person she had in her life. We're not thinking that we're going to move her to Midland, Odessa and not give her an ability to talk to this young man, correct?
No, Judge, I've talked to the family. The family knows about the relationship. I think the family is going to be supportive of her as long as it's healthy and appropriate. Okay.
I just want to make sure we're not treating this young lady like a little child. I sort of almost remember being a teenager. So I just want to make sure we're being thoughtful. We're moving her a long way from, again, it was a good thing he was in her life at the time this removal got started. So, all right. Is there anything further then from anyone?
Judge, if they still have that ICPC, can we have a hearing before they try to move the child to Colorado Springs if they're moving the child to the Midland, Odessa area?
I would think that'd be a smart thing to do. So I'm ordering the child be moved to Maria Rios, and that otherwise the child would not be moved absent either an agreement of all the parties or court order. And probably I'm thinking the department wouldn't plan on moving the child to Colorado if the child's doing well with maternal aunt. All right. All right. Is there anything further from anyone? Case is on the court's docket for a status hearing. If not, will be the department is present through Ms. West. CASA is this child's guardian ad litem. CASA is present through Ms. Taylor and also Ms. Goldsmith. Spring Thummel is standing in for Katie Casper, the attorney ad litem for the child. Sam Kinslow is present with the mother, Jennifer Johnson. Lloyd King is present pro se. He is an alleged father that requested genetic testing at the adversary, which was ordered. We're set for a status hearing. Is everyone ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may call your first witness.
The department called Ms. Scythe, as it relates to the mother, am I correct that she reviewed and signed her family plan of service?
She did.
And have the referrals for her services been sent in?
I did. I sent them in yesterday.
Is the department recommending any additional services be added to her family plan of service?
No, not at this time.
And Ms. Scythe, as it relates to Mr. King, was there a family plan of service created for him?
Not yet. Not until we know that he is the father.
And do you have an update as it relates to genetic testing for Mr. King?
Mr. King did submit to genetic testing, but we're just waiting on Isabella to submit to her sample.
And has that been scheduled?
Yes, it's scheduled August 31st.
Is there anything else you feel the court needs to be made aware of at this time?
No, ma'am.
I'll pass the witness.
Mr. Kinslow?
Isn't it true that my client, Ms. Johnson, did sign the family service plan?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. No other questions.
Ms. Thummel?
Ms. Scythe, are there any services that this child is needing at this time that have not been set up or requested?
No, ma'am.
I'll pass the witness.
Mr. King, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. The case is set today for a status hearing. Normally, the court would make an order if there were services that the department was asking that a parent complete. You understand that?
Yes, ma'am, so far.
All right. And so you're the alleged father, and I have ordered genetic testing for you. And it sounds like that seems to be progressing, that we ought to have the results fairly soon.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to make sure that you're aware the law gives us pretty much 1 year from start to finish for this case. And so,
Could you read it up to us again, please?
I'm sorry?
Could I hear that again, please? Could I hear what you said again, please?
Sure. Normally, the law gives CPS courts 1 year to help parents be in a position to provide a safe and stable home for a child. And so I understand you're waiting till the genetic test gets back before you start services. But if you wanted to start services early, the department would make a plan for you and you could get started on that. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so you still are requesting to wait until you get those genetic testing results.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So once the results come in, if Mr. King is the father, Ms. Scythe, I guess shortly thereafter, y'all will basically have a little family group conference or a meeting with dad to get an idea of what services should be offered to him if he's the father, if any.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And so then, sir, it may be a while if you're the father for the court to order your family service plan. But as soon as it gets set up, you can start working services so that you don't lose time. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. All right. And having heard Mr. Kinslow's questions and the mother has signed her plan, the court will continue the department as the temporary managing conservator. I will approve the current placement and prior orders for visitation. The court will make the family service plan for the mother an order of the court. I'm making a note that there's no plan for alleged father at this time due to his request. So, ma'am, your progress on your family service plan will be reviewed by the court at every future hearing. The law requires that I let you know if you are unable or unwilling to provide a safe environment for your child. Your parental rights could be subject to restriction or termination. How did Isabella get her last name, Ms. Johnson? Was that your maiden name, ma'am? Can you shake your head, yes or no? That was not your maiden name. Okay. Well, that's kind of brings some interesting questions for me that maybe you lawyers can figure out between now and next time, since we can't hear mom. The next hearing in this matter is the initial permanency, December 19th, 2023. Second permanency and final is April 16th, 2024. And our dismissal date, July 1st, 2024. Case is on the court docket. If there's nothing further, will be permanency. Ms. Gongora is present for the department. CASA is JC's guardian ad litem. CASA is present through Ms. Witt. Kevin Keithley is her attorney ad litem. John McLeod is present for Father Jesse James Madison. And Mr. Sibley is present for the mother, Brandy Fiesler Madison. Is everyone ready for the permanency review?
Yes.
Yes, Judge.
May I call your first witness?
That would be Miss Gomez.
Oh, does the department offer their report?
We do, Your Honor.
No objection.
Any
No
objection?
objection.
All right, it's admitted. I guess while we're waiting, if everything in the report now, oh, here's Ms. Gomez.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
And Ms. Gomez, you were not here when I offered the report, but everything in that report that you prepared for the court proceeding today was true and correct at the time of its filing. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
JC is currently with Miss Birch, who's here today. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
How has she been doing in that home?
She's been doing great.
Are there any concerns for JC's health or well-being at this time?
No, there isn't.
The report indicates that neither parent at this time is in contact with the department, and neither one of them are complying with any of the services, including drug testing for the department. Is that correct?
That's correct.
When was the last time you had contact with the mother?
It was around the beginning of June.
And did she indicate at that time that she was having any issues with working services or had any problems with complying? with
No,
services?
no.
Did she indicate a desire to see her daughter?
She didn't. She did say that she wanted her service planned and for me to email it to her, and I did. And I asked if she had any questions on it, and she didn't.
And you said that that was the last time that you spoke with her.
Yes.
What about the father?
I believe it was around March for the father.
And at that time, it was clear that he did not want to participate with the department in any type of services. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And since then, has he maintained that attitude or opinion towards the department's family plan?
Yes.
And to be clear, the only services being requested is for him to maintain a safe and stable home and to drug test randomly for the department. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And he has not complied with that.
Correct.
Is it correct, Ms. Gomez, that neither of the parents have seen JC since prior to the removal?
Yes, that's correct.
Is there anything that you haven't stated or that isn't listed in the report that you feel the court should be made aware of at this time?
No.
The goal is currently relative adoption. Is that right?
Yes.
Have either of the parents indicated in any of the conversations that you've had with them that they might be willing to relinquish their rights or that they had an issue with Miss Birch as the caregiver?
Neither have expressed issues with Miss Birch. The father had mentioned that he wants for Miss Birch to keep JC long term, but he has not mentioned relinquishing his rights to me.
With the way that the parents are not engaging in services, does the department anticipate requesting to take up a final at the next hearing?
Yes.
I'll pass the witness.
Mr. Sibley?
Yes, ma'am. You said you had an email address for my client. Is there a new phone or physical address for her?
No, it's the same physical address that she has made me aware of.
Okay, looking in the report, that's where she hasn't actually been there, though, as far as you're aware. Is that correct?
Every time I've gone, she hasn't been there. The last time I did go, there was someone there looking for her as well. So I'm guessing she does live there.
Okay. And is it possible that you can send me the email address just to make sure we have the correct one?
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you. No further questions, Judge.
Thank you. Mr. McLeod?
Judge, I don't have any questions of Ms. Gomez.
Mr. Keithley? You're on mute, Mr. Keithley.
Just briefly, JC's starting the third grade this week. Is that correct?
I believe it was last week, but yes.
Oh, last week. Okay. And she's doing well with her sister, correct?
Yes, she is.
Her sister's meeting her needs, her physical and emotional needs. Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Right. You feel like her sister, placement with her sister is in her best interest. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Is there anything else that JC needs at this time that you're aware of?
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I pass the witness, Sherman.
Thank you. Anything further of this witness?
Judge, can I just ask one or two questions I just thought of?
Sure.
Ms. Gomez, has JC spoken to you or to your knowledge spoken to anyone about wanting to see either or both of her parents?
Yeah, she has spoken to me that she does want to see her parents.
Okay. And is it upsetting to her that she has not had contact with them?
Yes, it was more upsetting at the beginning of the case. I feel like now she's more, in a way, used to it. But she does still express she wants to see them and ask if there has been any updates.
Okay, thank you. No other questions?
Your next witness, Ms. Gongora.
No further witnesses, Judge.
Mr. Sibley.
No witnesses, Judge.
Mr. McLeod.
No witnesses, Judge.
Mr. Keithley.
Your Honor, I don't have any witnesses, but if Ms. Witt would like to add her thoughts, I would give her the floor.
All right, thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Witt.
The last time the advocate went out, it was kind of different for JC. She had changed her opinion about wanting to see her parents. It was kind of a shock to the advocate at the time because for a long time she was talking about wanting to see her mom, wanting to talk to her mom. But apparently this last time it seemed like she was almost angry that she hadn't. And so that was a big change for her, for us anyway.
Ms. Birch, you're the current caregiver, and apparently you're doing a great job with this third grader. Is there anything that you believe that you need for her or that we need to help you with?
No, ma'am. I think we're good.
And so do you believe that both of your parents are going to be in a position to wanting you to adopt this young lady?
I definitely hope so.
Okay. Do you speak to them at all?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right.
Judge, if I may just interject one thing, I know that Mr. Madison, even at the removal hearing, and to my knowledge, has not changed his position. As stated, is very happy for JC to be with Ms. Birch, feels like she's loved and cared for. He would be very willing, unless he's changed since then, to not relinquish his parental rights, but agree to permanent custody of the child with Ms. Birch. I don't know whether that would make any difference to how the department might proceed or what Ms. Birch might do, but that also, of course, would allow for Ms. Birch to receive some child support. And he, to my knowledge, he does work.
Is this a case in which if there were a relative adoption, Ms. Birch would be able to qualify for a subsidy?
I believe so, since they're both getting licensed.
Okay. All right. The court has reviewed the progress of the parents on the family service plans. I will continue the department as the temporary managing conservator. The court finds that the department is making reasonable efforts to reunify, but also to make and finalize an alternate plan. The court approves of the department's plan at this time. The court finds that the parents are making no progress on their family service plans. There are no parents here to warn. I have made a note that the case, the setting in December will be December 19th as scheduled. It's set for second permanency and final. So Ms. Gomez, if you'll make sure that there's a report filed in the event we do not, for whatever reason, take up a final, then we can have a permanency hearing. But if the parents are not making a considerable amount of progress, the court will plan on having a final, and that is after 9 months of the department being TMC. This case is on the court. If there's nothing further from anyone for an initial permanency hearing, the department is present through Ms. Gongora. Kevin Keithley is the attorney and guardian ad litem for the child. Mr. McLeod is present. And Ms. Bridgewater, you have Azari with you. You're on mute.
I do not. I sent her the link.
All right.
Because I'm currently at Child Watch.
I'm sorry for that.
We had tried to reach her as well, Judge. Hadn't gotten any response from her, but we had thought last time she was with Ms. Bridgewater, and we were hoping that would be the case this time as well.
Right. She did not ask me to have her with me or anything like that this time.
All right. Sam Martinez was appointed for the unknown father. He is present, and there has been one gentleman he was able to locate, Jalen Nevels, who came forward, thought that he might be the father, requested genetic testing, and that gentleman has been ruled out or excluded as being the father. So I guess we're back to unknown father. Were you expecting any other gentlemen to appear today, Mr. Martinez?
No, Your Honor, I've not had a chance. There's one gentleman that's actually in McLennan County Jail. I haven't had a chance to talk to him yet, but, and I'll see whether or not he wants genetic testing. I also have Brianna sent me a waiver of interest. I don't know what he's going to do one way or another, but.
All right. In the event you visit with him and he would like genetic testing, I guess either y'all can send an agreed order for genetic testing and the court will approve that as soon as I get it, or we could add it to the docket if he wants to, if we want him to appear in court for me to order genetic testing. But if he wants testing, then if y'all want to send me an agreed order, then I'll get that ordered as soon as possible so Ms. Bridgewater can get that one to the Office of the Attorney General. Otherwise, we're set for an initial permanency. Ms. Gongora, you may proceed.
The department calls Rachel Bridgewater.
Yes.
Ms. Bridgewater, your report indicates that the goal at this time is relative adoption. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that is with the current placement, Ms. Sheila Canales.
Yes.
How is Josiah doing in that placement?
She's doing wonderful. She's rolling over, trying to pull herself up. You know, she's just crawling around, scooting around, not really crawling yet. She's working on it though.
And does the department have any concerns for Josiah's health or safety at this time in that placement?
No.
Your report also indicates that the mother at this time has started individual therapy. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Is that the only service that she is actively engaged in at this time?
I got a phone call this morning from her therapist, and because she gets therapy, parenting, and anger management all in one with her therapist, and she has not engaged but in 3 sessions with her therapist plus an intake, and so they haven't really got to get into depth on parenting and anger management.
But as far as you know, she is attending her sessions, and so she is at least engaging in that service.
Her last engagement was the end of July. She has not engaged this month at all.
Okay. And I might have misunderstood that from the way that you had answered the question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But so you're saying that she's missed the last 3 sessions. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Is she in danger of being discharged at this time?
Not yet.
The department notes concerns of Miss Hill not being able to adequately support herself. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
But it's my understanding that Miss Hill has been able to get herself into an apartment now. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am. And she has recently gotten a job at M&M Mars. She's supposed to start this week. So.
Okay, and so that would be a recent development.
That's a good thing.
What are the safety concerns at this time, Ms. Bridgewater?
Safety concerns at this time is the fact that she is not addressing her mental health and the ramifications that can cause with her being able to be stable mentally to care for Josiah. Also the instability of she'll get a job, keep it for a few days, and then she's done. So she's not had stable employment to be able to provide.
And Ms. Bridgewater, is it correct that there's also been a lack of consistency with her visits with the child?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain that for the court?
She has been given 23 opportunities to visit her child, and she has completed 8 visits total, 2 with the caregiver and 6 with the department.
And when was the date of that last visit?
Yesterday was the day she was supposed to visit, and she did not.
When was the last time she actually visited with the child?
July 3rd.
And Miss Hill is currently pregnant, is that correct?
That is correct.
Is she going to doctor's appointments on a regular basis?
She indicates that she is. She has not provided me any documentation. I have requested it from the doctor's office and have not received anything yet.
When you visited her home, does she appear to have the necessary equipment or materials that she would need to care for that baby once she has him?
She has a bassinet and that's it.
Do you know when she's due?
February 17th.
Okay, so she has some time to continue gathering those things, correct? Is there anything else that you feel like the court needs to be made aware of at this time?
I did get her psychological back this morning, the results from that. I sent that out in an email. I have not had a chance to review it yet, but she did complete that service.
I'll pass witness.
Mr. McLeod.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Bridgewater. In terms of the therapy, you've been very good about sending updates on how Ms. Hill is doing, but I don't think I've gotten any therapy notes. You may have just recently received them. Would you please, in the future, when you send your pretty much, I guess, monthly updates, if you would please attach any therapy records or anything like that, that would be helpful.
Okay.
In terms of Ms. Hill's psychological, I know you just got it and you did immediately send it to me. Thank you. And so you said you hadn't reviewed it. If the department reviews that report and wants anything added to Ms. Hill's service plan, would you please notify me of that? Maybe we can reach agreements on that versus having to go back to the court for a formal hearing.
Yes, sir.
Now she has been drug testing. It looks like on a regular basis, the only thing being is she ain't going to do a hair follicle, which correct. I think she was very clear from the beginning of the case. She wasn't going to do that. Correct.
Correct.
But for the most part, she's been testing, and when she's been testing, she's been negative.
Correct.
Okay. Does the department feel like they need to get a hair follicle? I mean, is that something that we may need to have some discussions with her about?
It's standard procedure. I mean, other than that, I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. The counseling or therapy, whatever you want to call it, that Ms. Hill's been getting, and again, you've been very good about trying to combine things into that one therapist versus going to different places for her. Have you talked with Ms. Hill about her failing to attend that regularly?
Yes, I have.
And has she given you any reason why that's not happening?
She tells me that her phone doesn't work. She has to go to Wi-Fi. When her phone does work, it doesn't have good connection.
Okay, so this therapy is being done not live, not face to face, being done through video or whatever.
It was originally scheduled for video, but with Azaria's phone issues, the counselor actually calls her and speaks to her.
Okay, so it's just by phone then.
Correct.
Okay. In terms of her mental health issues, has she been treated by a psychiatrist before?
When she was a youth in care, yes.
Have you been able to get those? Well, I assume when she was in care, you got those records.
I have not reviewed them all.
Okay. Is she, to your knowledge, does she have any medical care provider that has recommended that she have mental health issues addressed?
In the past, yes.
And how long ago was that?
Before she aged out of care.
And I'd have to go back and look, was the department wanting her to have some sort of psychiatric exam?
We were waiting for the recommendations from the psychological.
Okay. So really the department's concern about her mental health being addressed is really based upon her past history when she was a child in care.
And what we have seen since she's been a parent of Josiah in care.
Okay. Has she given any reason why she hasn't had more visits with the child?
She indicated that transportation was an issue, and so I've offered to pick her up as well as the child to make sure that visits happen, and she has still canceled.
And now my recollection is that the caregiver will allow her to visit in the home.
She and the caregiver have had some words, and so the caregiver asked that the department continue to do the visits.
So all visits now are going to be through the department.
At this time, yes.
Okay. Thank you. No other questions.
Mr. Martinez,
No questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Keithley,
Ma'am, didn't the mom, forgive me if I'm wrong about this, but didn't the mom have a visit scheduled yesterday or the day before and she canceled it?
Yesterday, and yes.
Okay. And that was while you were already in transport with the child, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Okay. And you've testified how the child is doing in the home. You feel like the current placement's in the best interest of the child?
I do.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I pass the witness.
does anyone have anything further of this witness?
Not at this time, Judge.
Any further witnesses, Ms. Gongora?
No, Your Honor.
Any witnesses, Mr. McLeod?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Martinez?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Keithley?
No, Your Honor.
The court has reviewed the progress of the mother on the family service plan. I will continue the department as the temporary managing conservator. I will approve the current placement. The court finds that the department is making reasonable efforts to reunify, but also to make and finalize an alternate plan. The court approves of the department's plan. The court finds that the mother is not making sufficient progress on her family service plan. I am also ordering Ms. Hill to sign a release of information for the department to obtain her OBGYN records regarding her prenatal care for this unborn child, including any lab results conducted by the physician's office. There are no parents here to warn. Our next hearing is second permanency and final December 12th. Sir, if you can remove your ball cap, I would appreciate it. Thank you. This case is set on the court's docket for a permanency before final on a monitored return. The department is present through Ms. West. Nancy Harrison is Caleb's attorney and guardian ad litem. Sam Kinslow is present with the mother, Sabra Harris, and Mr. Sibley is present with the father, Brandon Wall. If everyone's ready, Ms. West, you may proceed.
The department calls Emily Tabor. Ms. Tabor, how is the monitored return going with Ms. Harris?
At this time, everything's going very well. Ms. Harris has maintained all of Caleb's medical appointments, WIC appointments. He's attending daycare. She's remained employed, and he's physically healthy and developmentally on target for a child his age.
Does the department have any concerns about the care Ms. Harris is providing Caleb on this monitored return?
No, ma'am.
Is there anything that Ms. Harris needs to be doing differently on this monitored return?
No, ma'am. I think she just needs to remain diligent and taking care of Caleb, making sure he goes to daycare and keeping up with his appointments like she has been.
Do you have any updates on Ms. Harris's progress on her family plan of service since the court report was filed?
She has continued to go to therapy. I just got back some therapy notes. They stated that she's still in attendance. They would like to just continue seeing her throughout the monitored return process just for a check-in, but she's doing really well.
Are there any additional services the department believes Ms. Harris would benefit from at this point?
No, ma'am. And she has continued drug testing. We do have a few more drug test dates. We're just waiting on the results to be returned to us. But as of right now, we don't have any concerns.
Do you have any other updates that relates to Ms. Harris or Caleb on the monitored return with his mother?
No, not at this time.
And as it relates to Mr. Wall, do you have any updates on his progress on his family plan of service since the court report was filed?
It is to my understanding that Mr. Wall does in fact have a home. However, I do not have the address to this home. To my understanding, he is still working. I haven't received a recent check stub from him. I believe I got one back in June, if I'm not mistaken. And I've also met him at his place of employment, so he is working there. Mr. Wall has told me that he does not wish to pursue therapy. He does not feel that he needs it. And he stated to me that he is clean and sober, and he will not be drug testing for me.
And so your court report mentions there have been some incidents and concerns regarding Mr. Wall and drug testing, correct?
Correct.
Is there a location in which Mr. Wall could drug test at this point?
Yes. So it is to my understanding that he can actually still go to A&D for drug testing. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he can also still go to quality lab testing in Hewitt.
And so, ma'am, are all of the referrals for his services active at this point?
Yes, ma'am, they are.
Okay. So there's nothing preventing him from being able to go and participate in his services?
No, not at all.
Do you have any other updates as it relates to his progress on his family plan of service?
No, ma'am.
To your knowledge, has Mr. Wall had any contact with Caleb?
To my understanding, since he was moved from his grandmother's home here in Waco into foster care initially, to my understanding, there has not been any further contact.
And that took place several months ago, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And has the department worked to try to facilitate a visit between Caleb and Mr. Wall?
Yes, it kind of got off to a rough start. Mr. Wall had gone and drug tested back on June 1st and then again on June 9th for color code testing days. He had asked about visiting with Caleb, and I told him that, we will absolutely start working on that, and that I would get in contact with Nancy, you, and as well as my supervisor and the courtesy worker, considering Caleb is all the way in San Antonio, just regarding if the visit would be here in Waco or in San Antonio. During this time, I know Mr. Wall was really anxious, and he had stated that he wanted to just forego it and then sign his rights away. And then he turned around and stated that he no longer wanted to do so. So we had in turn finally set up the visit to honor those drug tests, even though we didn't have any current drug tests, but we were just trying to honor them. And Mr. Wall was not able to attend the first visit that we had scheduled due to work and transportation issue. And then we ended up rescheduling it. And again, he was not able to get off of work. And he stated again at that time that he wanted to relinquish his parental rights.
And so that's been a back and forth between Mr. Wall and the department about wanting to potentially relinquish his rights or his involvement on this case moving forward, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And so at this time, the department tried to set up that visit, but it didn't take place?
Correct.
Okay. Do you have any other updates as it relates to Mr. Wall?
No, ma'am.
Is there anything else you feel the court needs to be made aware of at this time?
No, ma'am.
I'll pass the witness.
Mr. Kinslow.
Thank you. I take it from your report that at this time, my client is on track for full reimplication come the final hearing in November.
Correct.
Okay. I'll pass the witness.
Mr. Sibley. You're on mute.
Sorry, Judge. Ms. Tabor, are you aware that Mr. Wall has signed a relinquishment of his rights that was scanned in and sent to your attorney, Ms. West?
Yes.
Okay, so you're aware that he's relinquished his rights, or that's what his intention is?
I'm aware that that is his intention, yes.
Okay, you weren't aware though that he had actually signed one, correct?
To my understanding was that he had signed one and then he actually ended up revoking it.
Okay, well, there's one signed this morning that was sent to Ms. West. Were you not aware of that?
I was shortly before the hearing, yes.
Motherfucker, up and through your face, I'm not giving up my fucking rights.
Excuse me, sir. Okay, let me say something, Mr. Wall. This is a courtroom and you will not use that language in my courtroom. The other thing is this is like a courtroom. And so we have a lawyer asking a witness a question and people do not interrupt the questions and answers. I'll give you a chance to speak later, but assuming that you can use correct courtroom language. Go ahead, Mr. Sibley.
I'll pass witness and just call Mr. Wall here in just a minute.
All right. Anything further? I'm sorry, Ms. Harrison.
Fine, just briefly. Ms. Tabor, you mentioned earlier that you had not seen Mr. Wall's home. Why is that?
I'm not entirely too sure. I have asked Mr. Wall for his address and it just has not been given to me in order for me to view the home.
Okay, so he's refusing to tell you where he lives then?
I would say yes at this time.
Okay. And then has there been some discussion with Ms. Harris about possibly moving in with her dad to be closer to family and have a true support system since she's all alone in San Antonio?
Yes.
Okay. And how does the department feel about that?
At this time, we are still discussing on whether it would be best for Sabra to move before the case is over, or if it would be better and easier for Ms. Harris to, considering our final is coming up in November, just going ahead and finishing, and then she can move without the concern of the department. We're really right there in between in the middle on both of them, but we do see that there could be an extra safety parameter if she moves before the case is over.
All right, pass the witness.
You said extra safety parameter. That would be a good thing to have other adults and more support. So does the department have a position if Ms. Harris and her lawyer make a decision, what would be right? Does the department feel like one would be more appropriate than the other, or would the department have a problem with one of the options?
I don't believe we would have a problem with one of the options. I would say that it would be as simple as getting a courtesy worker who could go out and check on them. I'm not too sure if a home study would be the most probable thing at this point. But I mean, if it took us having to travel to where her father lives and looking through the home, I believe the only concern, the reason why Caleb wasn't placed with her father in the beginning is because he is still on parole. If I'm remembering correctly, he won't be off of parole until 2025. Due to that's really the reason why we had it placed there in the beginning.
Okay.
May I ask one more question, Your Honor?
Of course.
Ms. Tabor, do you know how long Ms. Harris's father has been on parole?
If I remember correctly, and I would have to double check this, I want to say he's been on parole for most definitely over 5 years at this point. I would have to fact check to get an exact date.
And to your knowledge, there have been no issues with his parole, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone have any further questions of Ms. Tabor? Your next
Okay.
Wes,
I have no further witnesses.
Mr. Kinslow.
I don't have any witness, although I would call Ms. Harris if I need to for a rebuttal if needed later.
Mr. Sibley, any witnesses?
Your Honor, I call Mr. Wall.
Go ahead, Mr.
Mr. Wall. Mr. Wall, so I think you were interrupting me a little earlier because I may have misspoke. I had the understanding that you had signed a relinquishment this morning, but I understand that you had shortly after indicated you didn't want to go through with that. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And so what is your intention as far as this case is concerned? What would you like to see happen?
I just want to be able to have rights to my son. I don't care if I have to see him. I don't care if I got to pay child support. I'm not relinquishing my rights. I don't care how much money you take from me. I just want to be able to see my son.
Okay. And have you heard the testimony earlier that you haven't seen him in quite some time? Have you been working with the department to try to get access to him?
Yeah, the department don't like to work with me, nor do they like to talk to me. So I don't have nothing to say to the department. CPS is
one second, Mr. Wall. If you'll just answer the question that's been asked. Can you re-ask your question, Mr. Sibley?
Yes, ma'am. So do you have any intention of seeing your son in the near future? Have you been working on getting visits started?
I would hope so, but I mean, it's hard to get in contact with CPS caseworker. She just hates men, from my understanding.
All right, one second. Next question, Mr. Sibley. I guess the question is, the father lives in which community? What's your address, sir?
I live in Waco.
All right. And your address?
I don't know the address offhand. I'd have to look it up.
Is that the house that you're currently sitting in?
No, I'm at work right now in the office.
All right. And the child is currently in San Antonio. Are there certain days you're off?
I work Monday through Saturday. I only have Sundays off. CPS says they can't work around my schedule. I have to take off work. I don't want to lose my job. I can't just take off work. They don't want to communicate with me. They don't want to do nothing.
All right,
Emily,
sir.
I've ever met in my life.
All right. Any further questions, Mr. Sibley?
Yes, ma'am. Just a couple. Mr. Wall, did you hear the testimony about that you hadn't begun several of your services and haven't been drug testing? Are you planning on doing that?
When
as far
I
as
did
the psychological testing and the drug testing?
You can take a hair follicle test and it'll prove that I haven't been doing drugs.
All right. One second. Mr. Wall, rather than just talking about the things you'd like to talk about, we're going to do this by question and answer and question and answer. You're on mute, sir. So just 1 second. All right, Mr. Sibley, if you'll ask your question again.
Mr. Wall, I was asking if you are intending on drug testing, because if you're aware of the court's policy that you have to drug test so you can have access to your son. Are you going to be able to do that?
When I did drug test, even when I was passing, they didn't let me see my son, and they won't work around my work schedule. And so I don't want to work with CPS. Just give me child support. Make sure I see my son every once in a while.
Okay. All right. And you also heard the testimony about the psychological testing and some other testing that had been ordered and set up. Have you made arrangements to get that started or to do that?
I'm not going to. I work 6 days a week. I don't have time for that. I got to pay bills.
Okay. I'll pass the witness, Judge.
Ms. Harrison, any questions?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. West?
No questions.
Mr. Kinslow?
No questions.
Any witnesses, Ms. Harrison?
I have no witnesses, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Wall, the court always appreciates when parents work, and I don't want you to lose your job. Oftentimes, my point is where there's a will, there's a way. You have an attorney. I have found Ms. Tabor to work very hard for parents that please don't roll your eyes at the court. I have been the judge of this court for 8 years. I have seen a lot of caseworkers, and I'm telling you, I've had Miss Tabor work hard. Now, if I can see how, if you treat her like you've treated this whole process today, it would probably be frustrating.
Well, don't take my rights away. I don't want nothing to do with this anymore.
If you would like to try to work services, if you would like to try to make things work, your lawyer can also work with Ms. Tabor to try to see about coordinating things. All right.
I have tried to talk to the lawyer plenty of times, and he refuses to talk to me. The only time I see him is now. He won't answer my calls. He won't call me back. My lawyers, I want a different lawyer. He's trash.
And again, sir, I have very few lawyers on my list, and the lawyers that are on the list of this court are handpicked. If you have left a message saying, Mr. Sibley, could you please contact me? I'd like to talk about issues that I'm having regarding a visitation.
Go ahead and take my rights. I don't want nothing to do with any of this anymore.
All right. You understand that you're wanting to give your rights away. It doesn't require the court to do that, as this child has a right to be supported by both parents. So I understand your frustration. The court has reviewed the progress of the parents on the family service plan. I will continue the department as the temporary managing conservator. The court finds that the department has made reasonable efforts to reunify. The court approves of the department's plan at this time. The court finds that the mother is making progress on her family service plan and the father is not making sufficient progress on his family service plan. Parents, the law requires that I admonish you, if you are unable or unwilling to provide a safe environment for your child, your parental rights could be subject to restriction or termination. November 7th is the final hearing. That's set to be virtual. Is that y'all's preference to leave that on a virtual date?
Yes, Your Honor.
So, Your Honor.
And are y'all anticipating that y'all will have agreements, or how much time will y'all need? Worst case,
From our perspective, Your Honor, I'm not expecting much, but I'll proceed to some developments today I don't know how to report to.
worst case scenario will start on November 7th. If we don't have enough time for the court to hear all of the issues, we'll start and recess and complete another day. All right. So the final is November 7th. Our dismissal date is November 21st, 2023. This is set on the court's docket. If there's no status hearing, the department is present through Ms. Gongora. Charles Levy is the attorney and guardian ad litem. Mr. Sibley is present for the father, Austin Wallace. Sam Martinez is present for the mother, Bonnie Alanis. You may proceed.
The department calls Katie Reyes. Is it correct that both of the parents attended the family group conference in this case?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
And so they were both able to participate in the creation of their family plans?
Correct.
And they were both able to review that family plan of service?
Yes, ma'am.
And it's my understanding that the mother has signed her family plan of service, but the father has not.
That's correct.
And are those family plans of service currently on file with the court?
Yes, ma'am.
And is it the department requesting that those family plans of service be made in order of the court today?
Yes, ma'am.
Did either of the parents indicate that they had any issues with their family plans?
No, ma'am.
Now, something that I had alluded to earlier during docket call was that there had been some issues with Sailor regarding vaccines. Is that correct?
Right. Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain that to the court?
So Mr. Wallace is opposed to Sailor getting her vaccinations, and Miss Alanis, she's for Sailor getting her vaccinations. So we're kind of in a dilemma with deciding whether to give Sailor her vaccinations or not.
And her lack of vaccination status, has that affected her in any way?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so we haven't had any issues with Sailor being able to go to school or anything like that?
Initially, we were having some problems, but I told the caregivers to temporarily sign a waiver until the judge made a decision or the court made a decision.
And when you say sign a waiver, is that a waiver with the school that waives the child having to have vaccines to go to school?
Yes, they did it through the school, and it was some sort of affidavit that Mr. Wallace had to sign and get notarized.
Are there any other issues that you're aware of at this time regarding this child's health or safety?
No, the child has been referred to an allergy specialist and we're waiting to get that scheduled. Her allergies have kind of been acting up lately. She has taken medication for that, but like I said, she's being referred to a specialist just to get that looked at.
Is there anything else that the department wanted to request from the court at this time?
On top of the immunization, I guess we can let the court decide whether or not Sailor can get her fluoride treatment. Mr. Wallace is opposed to fluoride treatment. Miss Elenis is wanting Sailor to have a fluoride treatment.
And that would be at the dentist, is that correct?
Yes, dentist, and then Mr. Wallace doesn't want Sailor to have fluoride in her toothpaste.
Does he also believe that that is part of a religious objection, or is there a specific reason behind that?
I think he mentioned it was his belief.
Is there anything else that you need to let the court know at this time?
No, ma'am.
I'll pass the witness.
Mr. Martinez.
Ms. Reyes, the mother's already started working her services, or at least setting those things out. Is that correct?
I believe she has started scheduling them, yes.
And she's been staying in communication with you. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Judge, I apologize. I believe the placement is just said she's in the waiting room. It should be Strasser.
I'll bring it in. Go ahead.
Okay. The mother, has she shown you pay stubs yet as far as from where she's working?
She has not.
But she has been staying in contact with you. She does know what she needs to do as far as her services. Is that correct?
Right. Yes, sir.
Is she supportive of the child, again, getting the vaccines, doing the fluoride, doing what needs to be done for the child to meet the medical needs, correct?
Yeah, she's in support of that.
I passed witness.
Mr. Sibley.
Judge.
I'm sorry, I heard judge, but that's all I heard.
No questions, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Levy.
Well, one second. Ma'am, couple of quick questions because I know it's a status hearing and I've forgotten. Did the parents agree to pay child support at the planning meeting or not? I thought maybe the mother did, but the father didn't.
Right. You are correct. The mother is willing to pay child support and then Mr. Wallace was not.
And this is not a foster placement. It's a family placement, right? Or fictive kin.
Yes, sir.
Right?
That's
and so would you think that paying $150 a person child support would be appropriate? I don't remember what mom agreed to pay.
I feel like it would be appropriate. It would definitely help the caregivers.
And you may or may not know that's certainly way below what guideline support is, right?
Sure.
All right. Now, let me ask you on the fluoride treatment, it's my understanding and the placements on that the lack of dental care going along with the lack of fluoride, this child's front teeth are brown or brownish, correct?
Yes, they do have some discoloration to them.
And the reality is, I believe mom had indicated that the child hasn't been to the dentist in several years. I don't think they could actually name a dentist, correct?
Right. Yes, sir. That's correct.
I want to address the religious objections. I want to be very clear, and you've seen my emails in this regard. I respect all religious beliefs, but I've inquired, have I not, in great detail about the nature of the religious beliefs and other things like that with no response from the father, correct?
I don't think we got a response from the father, but his attorney did send an email back with Mr. Wallace's beliefs.
But the beliefs did not attribute his beliefs to any particular religion. It's just what he believed, correct?
Right. Yes, sir. That's correct.
And then at the planning meeting, he also just said, hey, we do natural stuff and things of that nature. He did not have any expressed religious objection, as I recall. Of course, he's not here to address that. That was kind of unfortunate. But, I've asked what religion, is it an organized religion? Where can I find the religious beliefs? I mean, it was a very detailed, I'm going to say very open, broad request. And he didn't come with any of that information, did he?
Right. That's correct.
And the mother has not indicated that the dad has it as a religious belief. He just has it as a belief.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
All right. And so in terms of the teeth, specifically, I indicated I would defer to the parents and all of that. But since the parents still disagree, would CPS think it's advisable to have this child have proper dental care?
We would like for Sailor to have proper dental care.
And then whatever the dentist recommendation is would be followed, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. In regard to the school attendance and vaccines, I understand that Mr. Wallace and maybe Ms. Wallace too are opposed to any kind of COVID vaccinations. That certainly is something that many parents have as a belief, but he's actually opposed to any immunizations at all, correct?
Correct.
And as you indicated, mom is not opposed, correct?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
And I want to be very clear. If Mr. Wallace wants to come forward at some future date to express what his beliefs are that are tied to a religion or religious observance or anything like that, I'm assuming you at CPS would be open, and certainly I know the judge would be open to hearing those, as would I, correct?
Right. Yes, sir.
All right. But again, it's just, some people like chicken, some people like tuna fish, but that's what I like. That doesn't mean that there's some religion that tells me I can't eat tuna fish. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
And of course, Mr. Sibley could speak up. I know he's standing in for Mr. McClinton if he's aware of any specific religion or religious observance or religious belief other than just the way Mr. Wallace feels, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's all. Thank you.
Anyone have any further questions of this witness?
No, Judge.
Your next witness, Ms. Gongora?
I have no further witnesses today.
Any witnesses, Mr. Martinez?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Sibley? Mr. Levy?
No, Judge, but I do note that the court usually invites the placement to share thoughts.
We're set for a status hearing, but Mr. Strauser, if there's anything that you feel like the court needs to be aware of at this time, I'll give you an opportunity.
Okay, thank you. I'd say when you're talking about the vaccinations, just some of the clarifications from what we have. She does have some of the vaccinations all the way up into the point where she was about 18 months old. And then at that point that she had never seen a doctor again until about, that point until she was 2 years old was the last time she was seeing a doctor, except for urgent care or something like that. And at that point, they never got her any more vaccinations. And he all of a sudden said, I don't want to get any more vaccinations. Mr. Wallace did. On her teeth, she does have, some discoloration of her teeth. In fact, last week she was just sitting here, just right here next to me the other day, complaining about one of her teeth hurting whenever she was eating. And I was like, and, we were both just kind of looked at each other and we're like, well, good thing we're taking her to the dentist, So there's just all kinds of on those two subjects. We, just kind of want to give our input on it, just knowing that, the mother wants it, the father doesn't. And also with me, just giving you some of my background, I actually work in the medical field. I work in the laboratory. And I actually have a degree in microbiology. So I know the importance of vaccinations and everything. So, I know how they work, all that stuff, all the ins and outs of it. So to me, it's very important for her to have get her vaccinations. Except for the COVID, I still, which that one is still, like everybody else, is still very controversial.
Thank you. I'm going to have a brief bench conference with the attorneys. Everyone else just hang tight. We'll be right back. For a status hearing. The court will continue the department as the temporary managing conservator. I will approve the current placement with the Strausers and the prior orders for visitation. I am making the family service plan for the parents in order of the court. I did have one question about that, either Ms. Reyes or Ms. Gongora. It does indicate that batterer's intervention is on the plan for the mother and the father. 25 years ago, I went to a conference where batterer's intervention was supposed to be the best thing since sliced bread. Here recently, I have heard some psychologists and therapists speak that they're not a fan of batterer's intervention. And so I'm curious, I know for a while it was like, I think it's really good. I think it's really good. So I'm wondering if that batterer's intervention, if y'all want to leave it batterer's intervention, or if you'd like to order some type of domestic violence, anger management as part of therapy.
Okay, so the domestic violence center here in Waco, they're not accepting any aggressors. So at this time, they're both labeled as aggressors. Okay. So, yeah.
All right.
Judge, if it pleases the court, and it sort of begs the question, it is my understanding, and of course, this is not the first case with these folks, that these people have been potentially engaged in violence dating back to high school. I can't interview anybody over that now, but I'll represent to the court that that's what I've been led to believe. They need as much as they can get. because otherwise we're going to be back here every couple of years. The court knows we've been here on other children. And so I don't, I mean,
they certainly need something for sure. I just want it to be effective and not take a bad situation and make it worse.
Right.
That's my point.
But I believe what I can represent to the court is that this specific program isn't something that either of the parents have participated in the past. And so I think that knowing that this is something that has been a repeated problem, that this might be the service that it could potentially change the circumstances moving forward.
Enough. So I'll order the plans as they've been prepared. I'll make them in order of the court. There are no parents here to warn. I am ordering that this child can have the fluoride treatment. That is not an immunization. And just to be clear, I'm a fan of immunizations. I've asked the lawyers to just double check for me to ensure that I can order immunizations over an objection of a parent. And so I will take that matter under advisement at this time. And if whoever might want to file a little one pager, then I will take it under advisement, and I will give y'all at least a week to file anything you'd like to file, and I will make a ruling by August 31st. I didn't know this was going to come up. This comes up very infrequently, and I just want to make sure that I'm following the law.
Child support, Your Honor.
Well, your request, Mr. Levy?
Yes, Your Honor. $150 a month, unless the mother agreed to a lower amount. I don't want to punish her for stepping over, but I don't know if she agreed to an amount or not.
All right, I'll order the mother and the father. It's going to be temporary support. We're going to pay it directly to the Strausers, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
I will make that an order of the court.
Mr. Levy, I think the mother was on board with paying $100 a month just because at that time she hadn't gotten a job yet, but now she's set up with a job. So I don't know if that'll make a difference.
Okay. Well, then I think 150 a parent, since they're separated, and this is family that's stepped up, is certainly not overly burdensome.
I'll order that it start on September 1st, 2023. And then Mr. Strauser, if you'll just make sure that y'all have some type of a record of each payment. You can sign, they can sign, and then it'll be very clear what's paid, what's not paid.
And that's per person, right, Your Honor?
That's per person. And you indicated the parents are separated at this time?
That's what they're saying.
All right. All right. Again, there's no parents here to warn. I have made the family service plan in order of the court. I'm going to make a ruling on the immunizations not later than August 31st. If y'all have any input, please go ahead and file a little memo. It doesn't have to be real fancy. Yes, Mr. Levy.
You just addressed that. Can it be done as a letter brief instead of?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it can just the quick and dirty on what supports your position.
Thank you.
So the next hearing will be an initial permanency. That is set for December 19th. Second permanency and final is April 16th. And our dismissal date in Alexander Griffith. Sorry. This case is on the court's docket for an initial permanency. The department is present through Ms. Gongora. Charles Levy is Ian's attorney and guardian ad litem. Mr. Dennis is present for the mother, Stephanie Griffith. And the father of this child is unknown. Mr. Kinslow was previously appointed to try to identify and locate the unknown father. He has filed his summary of efforts and has been discharged. You may proceed, Ms. Gongora.
The department calls Mary Ompad. Ms. Ompad, do you have any changes to the report since the filing?
Yes, ma'am. The goals.
What specifically is the goal changing to?
The family reunification to relative conservatorship, and the concurrent goal, family reunification.
And why is the goal changing to relative conservatorship at this time?
There was an issue at a visit that we attempted with Mom and Ian. Ian had stated before he did want to see Mom, then he went back and forth. Well, I want to see her, I don't want to see her. And then the evening before, he wasn't really sure. Prior to the visit, on the drive to the visit, he became very upset. Once he saw Mom, he basically wouldn't move from the chair. He was angry, upset, crying. He had his head in his lap and refused to see mom. So I tried to speak to him. He wouldn't respond at all. So I asked Miss Griffin to step aside and have a seat. And I asked him and grandma to come and talk to me. And he just stated, I don't want to ever see her again.
And is it correct, Ms. Ompad, that at that time the department reached out for some type of emergency therapy session between Ian and his therapist?
Yes, ma'am. And we also recommended for Miss Griffin to do the same because she's also receiving therapy.
And did Ian's therapist recommend anything specifically to the department?
Yes, ma'am. She stated to stop all parent-child visits.
And what was her reasoning behind that?
She stated that he is just too traumatized. She suspects something else has occurred and we don't know. He has stated that before that he was left alone to care for his older sibling, but he did also see the violence that occurred in the home.
And so at this time, the department is changing the goal based on those recent events, but also the department is not wanting to continue with visits between Ian and his mother. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. And also she has not done really done much of the service plan except therapy. She has not drug tested. She has not tried to get a job, find a home. She's homeless right now, and she doesn't really keep contact with the department.
And really, mom's progress has been very limited, as you stated, with her only engaging in therapy at this time. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am. Up until the incident, since the incident, no more therapy. She didn't even call in for the emergency session.
And can you tell the court specifically what date the incident occurred?
It was on August 1st.
And since that time, is it correct that the mother has not been communicating with the department?
She did reach out. She is currently homeless. All she asked was for assistance for emergency shelter. I gave her a list of places that I know she could reach out and she could have somewhere to stay for overnight.
Other than the obvious emotional turmoil that Ian seemed to have been in the last month, is he doing okay in his placement with his grandmother?
Yes, ma'am. He loves his grandmother. He was with grandmother all his life. He only was not with her this short period of time when great grandma passed, because they all lived together. He did have siblings, all his family, his brothers were in town visiting, and his sister. They returned right before school started. Then Ian began school. Unfortunately, COVID and is going around, so he got sick. Grandma thinks he is the person that brought it home because he's better now. But he's fine. He did get sick right after school started last week.
And other than that, does the department feel like there are any concerns regarding the placement being able to meet his physical and emotional needs at this time?
No, there's no concerns.
Is there anything else specifically that you feel the need to make the court aware of at this time, or anything additional that's not listed in your court report that you feel the court should know?
No, ma'am, that's all.
I'll pass the witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Ompad, you said this visit occurred on August 1st?
Yes, sir.
And so I assume the emergency therapy session with the child occurred on August 1st as well, correct?
I'm not sure if it did, sir, because it was at the end of the day. It was at 4 p.m., the visit. It should have happened the next day. Sorry.
So August 2nd?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, can you explain why there's been no notes, no update, nothing provided to my office related to this incident, and we're now asking to shut off my client's visits completely without any information to me other than presenting it here today?
I'm sorry, sir. I thought I CC'd you in the email.
Okay. Have you received notes or any written recommendation that my client should stop seeing the child per the child's therapist?
Yes, sir, I did. Any email.
Is that a reason that wasn't provided to me?
No, sir. There's no reason I should have sent it to you.
Okay. I'll pass the witness, Judge.
When I communicated with Ian recently, I would characterize him as being ambivalent about having a visit with mom, and somewhat distant when anything in regard to mom would be brought up. Would that be consistent with how he has reacted with you? Or has he been angry with you if mom's brought up?
It's been back and forth, sir, especially since his siblings were home for the summer. They played a big part of it. They were encouraging him to forgive mom and to see mom.
Is it fair to say that specifically he really would like to spend some time with his brother?
Oh, absolutely, sir. They spent the entire summer together, and grandma is already making plans for the next break that they come back.
Right. And so if I were to say this by way of an assumption, hypothetical, whatever, it seems to me that he is very motivated to get to spend time with his brother. And that the only way to do that may be with some contact with mom. Does that seem about right?
The brothers are placed with their dad, sir.
Oh, okay. So that's good. And I apologize. That was not on my radar at the moment, but then I'm done. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Other questions of this witness?
No, Your Honor.
Other witnesses, Ms. Jungora?
No further witnesses.
Mr. Dennis?
No witnesses, Your Honor.
Mr. Levy?
No witnesses.
Sounds like mom hasn't really been working her services and hasn't been drug testing and visiting. So, I mean, I understand Mr. Dennis's point of just now hearing about this, but I'm thinking mom hasn't. It'd be one thing if mom had been very consistent and now all of a sudden there's this issue. But I had made a question mark at the top of my report why the department's goal was still family reunification. So, and where is your client today, Mr. Dennis? Are you aware?
I'm not, Judge. We have little to no contact with our client. I would only request that you order the department to provide the visit notes, the therapy recommendation, and anything else related to that specific incident so that I can do my diligence on it.
Well, under the circumstances, the court is inclined to go ahead and suspend the visits at this time. It seems like mom wasn't being very consistent anyway, which may be part of the problem. So if she will start working services and the child is getting engaged in therapy, we may be in a different place at some time. But for purposes of today, the court has reviewed the progress of the mother on the family service plan. I will continue the department as the temporary managing conservator. I will approve the current placement. The court finds that the department has made reasonable efforts to reunify and also to make and finalize an alternate plan. The court approves of the department's plan. The court finds that the mother is not making progress on her family service plan. At the request of the department and under the circumstances, I am going to suspend mom's visit at this time. If the mother begins to be consistent in her services and testing, and then maybe Ian's therapist can kind of figure out where we are, then we can maybe look at what may be appropriate going forward, whether it's family therapy, to see what we can do. There are no parents here to warn. And Ms. Colson is the maternal grandmother, correct?
That is correct.
Is she working on getting licensed?
She has actually declined to participate in PCA, and she's not interested in adopting the child at this time.
No parent here to warn. The next hearing will be December 19th, that second permanency and final. And our dismissal day is March 4th, 2024. There was a lot of discussion about visits, but is that something that the grandmother and the father of the siblings have been able to work out?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am. They continue to talk. Even sister is still here with right now because she still has the flu. He does have virtual visits nonstop with them. They FaceTime daily.
Very good. Thank you. That concludes our morning. We'll be back at 1.